And I want to get your reaction to the incident in Gaza in a moment. But first, I just wondered if you could react to the story overnight and George Galloway winning the Rochdale by-election. What do you make of that?
I mean, this was a chaotic by-election. It's taking place when temperatures are already very, very high, as we've been seeing in the headlines and you've been broadcasting. This should have been an easy win for Labour, following the loss of Tony Lloyd. But, many Britons will be waking up today asking themselves, if George Galloway is the answer, we really don't know what the question is. I read some of his literature. They are so full of hate. They're designed to rally fear. They're designed to cause division, an entire campaign based on Gaza. That's not to say that's not important. I've been involved in that discussion. But ultimately,
well, yes, he would say, just to cut in, sorry, Tobias Ellwood, just to cut in, he would say it's not about hate, it's about supporting people who are in great difficulty.
I haven't got a problem with that at all, and I would be one of the first to be there too. Ultimately, you look at the language that he's using, and it is inflammatory. It doesn't offer answers. It simply articulates problems. And he plays politics very, very well indeed, but he offers no political leadership. And we'll no doubt see this demonstrated in the House of Commons very, very soon when he takes his seat. And that is the concern I have, not just for this by-election, but for where our elections are going, with the general election coming up as well. Such inflammatory language that is used on leaflets and so forth to really, as I say, encourage people to dive into their hatred rather than look to the positive side, the constructive places to where Britain should actually go. But the only positive takeaway that I see is, the Conservatives came third. By-elections are usually unhelpful snapshots of where the country sits at the moment. But the fact that the Conservatives, I think, polled very, very well indeed in this chaotic situation shows literally that the next general election, when it'll be more about who runs the country, who runs the economy, where is our nation going, that is going to be a very, very different perspective. I certainly hope that the bar will be raised, because this was a very, very horrible by-election to watch.
And of course, George Galloway isn't here, but I'm sure that he would dispute that description of his language being inflammatory. He said that his victory was for Gaza, and I do want to ask you about Gaza, because more than 100 people have been reportedly killed there yesterday while trying to get aid. Different accounts from each side about what happened, but how concerned are you about that incident?
Very much indeed. I mean, we're seeing these further headlines, but this was a terrible, terrible attack. Images that are emerging. It's probably set back, if we're honest, any chance of securing a form of pause in the fighting to get a hostage exchange prior to the start of Ramadan. I've been very supportive of Israel. It's right to defend itself, but there's not been a clear strategy that sits behind what Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing with his superior military force in Gaza. What is his objective? What's the governance and security structure that he's aiming towards? And now we see events like this. They're caused by the chaos of war. There's no third party there to even monitor what's going on. And certainly what we're seeing is because of the approach by Israel, that the aid isn't getting in the scale that's required. This, I understand, was caused by aid trucks getting into the north of the Strip. First time they've been there for some time, absolute panic to get there. And then in that pandemonium, shots were fired. The idea that now Netanyahu wants to then plow into Rafah is simply wrong. And he's hemorrhaging international support that was there from the very start when those barbaric attacks took place on the 7th of October. I would actually like to see what we used in the British Army when I served, the yellow card, the rules of engagement, the individual requirement of any soldier to uphold international law. I would like to see that from the Israeli perspective. It is something so important that in the heat of the moment, any individual soldier knows what standards they need to be upholding, because their immediate boss, their commander, or indeed the political leaders can't be there all the time to underline that. We need to ensure that this simply doesn't continue to spiral out of control, because that's exactly what's happening right now.
And the US President Joe Biden has said that this incident will complicate the ceasefire talks, as you indeed have said yourself. Also from the US yesterday, the Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin was asked how many Palestinian women and children have been killed since the October the 7th attacks. He said over 25,000, which is, of course, a staggering number. What do you make of him saying that? What do you make of the figure? And do you sense a change of tone from the US?
These are unacceptable numbers, however you put this, and that's why I'm saying I think it's wrong. Just the tactics that the Israeli military are using in order to secure their objective, which I underline, I still don't understand. So the scale of killing and the fact that you get the Americans, Israel's most closest security ally, now publicly saying these things. Imagine what they're saying behind the scenes. This simply cannot go on. There will become a tipping point where Israel will be told that your approach in taking on Hamas is simply not working. And we're going to have to look at other ways of getting aid in, whether that's to create our own humanitarian corridor in potentially from the sea or via Egypt as well, that we control, that is separate to Israel. That's where this goes if we don't see an improvement on this. But ultimately, the bigger picture now is the famine is potentially going to outbreak in Gaza as well. The scale of death there is going to be absolutely abhorrent. And I make it really clear, the international community cannot sit by and watch this happen. Calls for a ceasefire. I appreciate this is a clarion call coming from everywhere. Ceasefires is something that we all want to get there, but there are steps to get there. The steps starts with a cessation of hostilities, which is what the British government has absolutely called for. That allows that aid in. That's got to be the priority right now.
OK, well, Tobias Ellwood, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed for sharing your thoughts.